On today's show, refurbished M1 iMacs, 4K at 120Hz from the next Mac Mini, XDR iMacs, OLED iPads, and how M1X Graphics will stack up versus Nvidia and AMD cards. It's your iCave Answers. I'm iCave Dave, and coming up next month it is the Ikversary. Thank you all so much for your suggestions for what we could do. Pizza party seems like something that people would quite like, so that's definitely not off the table. However, I did speak to Gary V yesterday. You might have heard of him. He's quite a big deal in the social media world, and I spent 10 minutes having a chat with him because I work with his social media team on Facebook. And he suggested that we do like a marathon. So, the suggestion that I would like to put on the table is that we do a 6-hour live stream. That is on Sunday the 15th of August. That would be exactly 1 year from the pilot of the Apple Daily. I would probably do it from 12 UTC to 1800 UTC. So from 1 PM where we would normally start our show here in the UK through till 7 PM. That seems like a pretty good chunk of time. What would you like to do? Should we get some guests on? Have you got anyone in mind that you would like to see on the show, even if they come on for like 15-20 minutes? We have a chat, and then we can get some other people on. I think that would be a really cool way to do it. Maybe we could do a call-in kind of format for iCave Answers. Let me know what you think, and yeah, I think this could be pretty good. Use hashtag Ikversary down in the comments. But today is an iCave Answers special, so we're going to get straight into it with your questions. First of all, the ever-faithful Evan Rodgers. iCave Answers, when do you think we will see refurbished iMac 24-inch appear in the Apple Store? Otherwise, will we see a price drop online at stores like Amazon? So I think we are going to be starting to see the refurbished ones coming through fairly soon. However, I don't think there's been much in terms of reduced pricing at the minute. And I think that's partially because there's still delays on getting hold of these. The demand for them must have been pretty good, because I think it's still like a couple of weeks out if you order even like a base model. So I think there's a little while to go before we need to see these discounted from Apple's side. But I'm sure it can't be too long because we've got new stuff on the way. Next up, Eugene King asks, iCave Answers, will the forthcoming M1X Mac Mini be able to output 4K video at 120Hz? Great question, and this is actually one that's kind of hanging in the balance, I would say, right now. So we have heard that the MacBook Pros are going to be getting mini LED displays. That much we kind of know at this point, unless there's some kind of drastic issue where they can't make them. We also know that the iPad Pro, which is the first product to get the mini LED displays, does have them running at 120Hz with variable refresh rate because it has ProMotion on it. So we know that the technology is there to do it. We don't know if that is going to be going into it right now. Now, Dylan on Twitter has said that he doesn't expect it to be coming this year. He expects the 120Hz to be coming for those MacBook Pros next year. But that doesn't mean that a Mac Mini wouldn't have the capacity to do it. And we're going to be talking a lot about the graphics capabilities of the M1X later in the show, so stay tuned for that. So it comes down to a fact of what kind of HDMI hardware they're going to put in, or Thunderbolt. I think it can be done. I think that the system is going to have the throughput to do it. I'm not sure if it will be able to do it with multiple displays, but it remains to be seen whether Apple enables this or not. I would hope so. Ryan Ballenger asks, iCave Answers, will the new M1X iMac get an XDR display? And if it does, how much do you think it would cost? Yeah, I think Apple might be putting themselves in a bit of a sticky situation with the XDR displays and iMacs at this point, because currently the XDR display is 32 inches and it costs you $5,000, I think, plus $1,000 if you want to stand it up without just leaning it against a wall. So $6,000 if we're being realistic here. The iMac, the larger one, is realistically, I mean, the current 27-inch starts at $1,799, I believe. I can't imagine it's going to be much more than that, but if they are going to put an XDR display in it, they could charge an extra $100 or so, maybe a couple of hundred. So let's say absolute top end, it's going to start at $2,000. $1,999 kind of makes sense as a starting point for it. I could see that would happen if they were to put the XDR displays in. Otherwise, I think they might bring the pricing down if it's not got XDR displays, the same way as they did for the Mac Mini. But we will see on that point. I mean, that's kind of pushing it, because these things are going to be absolute monsters. Travis Smith asks, iCave answers, would it be cool to have the M1 or M1X in the iPad Air? Would it be cool? Yes, it would. Is it likely to happen? No, it's not. So I think this is one of the kind of common misconceptions that people have about the way that the M series chips work. There's a lot of people asking if we're going to see an M1 iPhone in a year or so. We're not. That's not how it works. So the M1 is based on the A14 that we have right now, but with more of the performance cores put in there. Now, the cores themselves are architected the same way, so they have the same single core performance. There's just more of them in the M1 in the M1 chip than there is in the A14 chip. There's twice as many. The difference for each generation of A series chip is that the cores themselves get faster in general. Now, they do sometimes play around with the layouts and how many of what kind of cores they have, but in general, the difference year on year is that those individual cores get faster by around about 20%. So the current iPad Air, the iPad Air 4th generation, uses the A14 chip, the same as you get in your iPhone 12, but the M1 goes into the Pro iPads. That's the equivalent of having an A14X, because previously the Pro iPads have always had the A10X, the A12X, the A12Z, and now the M1, which is basically an A14X. The iPad Air has always got just an A series chip without an X, so you know that it's the same core layout as the equivalent iPhone. Hopefully that makes sense, but that's why we probably will not see an M1 based iPad Air. On the M1X front, the M1X is probably too power hungry for something like an iPad. It also is probably going to be more performant than it would need for what you can do with a single display. This is more for when you're doing kind of computational stuff, heavy rendering, but also when you need to drive multiple high-resolution displays. Idiot with Internet asks, iCave answers about the whole iPad to OLED thing when they release the redesigned iPad, which seems like it'll come before the new iPad Air. Do you think that we'll get OLED first? It's a smaller screen, more in line to an iPhone, and it would make that upgrade insane. Great question. However, yeah, I do think it would be very strange if they were to put an LCD into it and then one generation later move it to an OLED. However, I don't think the OLED thing is going to happen. I don't think that this is a legit rumour. I think that this is a misunderstanding of high HDR displays being mentioned by different leakers and different supply chain sources, and it's being mistaken as an OLED display tech. I don't think they're going to put OLED into iPads. I think Apple has put its money down on mini LED, and I think that's what they're going to stick with. Zelly Glim asks, iCave answers, how would M1X GPU compare to an Nvidia 3000 series? Now, it is quite difficult to find a way of comparing the M1s to a lot of Nvidia chips, and the main reason for that is that the M1s use metal and the Nvidia chips haven't been in Apple hardware for quite some time. So we have a metal score for the M1, which is 21,168. Now, the M1X we're expecting to come in two different flavours, so there's going to be a 16-core graphics and a 32-core graphics. The 16-core graphics, let's take that 21,100 and basically double it and then round down a little bit, so let's say 40,000. That is in line with an AMD Navi 10, which is 40,800, or a GTX 1080 Ti is about 30,500, just for context, so it's about 25-30% faster than that. It's more in line with the Nvidia Titan XP Collector's Edition, which gets a respectable 41,063. Now, the M1X, the 32-core, there's not a great deal to really compare it to. So what I've basically done is said it'll get around 70,000 points in metal scores, and then I've converted what's kind of around that over to an OpenGL to see what other hardware sits nearby. Now, it's not a particularly great way of doing it because obviously different things perform differently with slightly different benchmarks, but still, it gives us a ballpark estimate, and it looks like it's going to be around about the performance of the 2070, the RTX 2070 from Nvidia, which is great. It's not a 3080 or a 3090 score, however, this is probably going to be a part of an integrated SoC in a laptop, and it's going to perform just as well when it's not plugged in. So I've estimated, as I say, around 70,000 points. If I was just to quadruple it, would be at like 84,000. I think 70,000 is probably a fairly reasonable estimate. So yeah, RTX 2070, I think that's a fair guess, and if that's what we're going to get in the next MacBook Pros, I think people are going to be pretty happy. Marcin Kowalczyk asks, iCave answers, I do wonder if iPhone 13/12s will feature the OLED that could flicker or push towards mini LED for the entire lineup. Now, I would say that the difficulty here is that mini LED is probably not quite precise enough for an iPhone. I think the mini LEDs are going to give you too much bloom with this. I think the OLED is probably the right technology. I haven't seen OLED flicker with the variable refresh rate, which is, I'm guessing, what you're saying could happen. As I say, I don't pay much attention to Android stuff going on, so I wouldn't have noticed it. But if that's the issue, do let me know down in the comments. I can't see them bringing mini LED over, but micro LED might be the way that they go, and that, I think, means that each pixel has its own kind of integrated backlight. I think it's a lot closer to OLED in those terms. It's not got kind of dimming zones, but dimmed pixels individually. So very interesting technology. Not 100% sure how far out that stuff is, but hopefully not too far away. And that's it for today's show, guys. So if you have a question you would like me to answer in a future show, whether it's a full-on iCave answers like this, or in one of our main shows, hashtag iCave answers down in the comments section. That's how you get your question answered, and I will see you in the next one. Thank you so much, and let me know what you think of the party ideas. But